Good morning, everybody. It's Mr. Polson back, and I've got baby Susan here with me. Now, yesterday, when we read chapter 5, House on the Prairie, we were introduced to the wildcat from Tennessee, Mr. Edwards, the Ingalls family's neighbor. Remember, he came and helped Pa help finish the house after Ma got hurt when the log fell on her leg. So, we've got a new character that we're going to be hearing about throughout the book named Mr. Edwards. Remember he sang that wonderful song? Old Dan Tucker was a fine old man, washed his face in a frying pan, combed his hair with a wagon wheel, had died of a toothache in his heel. So get out of the way for old Dan Tucker, get out of the way for old Dan Tucker, get out of the way for old Dan Tucker. He's too late to get his supper. That's a song that we would have been singing together in class about every day. And wouldn't it have been cool to have a little ukulele with that, Evie? Okay, here we go. Chapter 6, Moving In. The walls are up, Pa was saying to Ma in the morning. We'd better move in and get along as best we can without a floor or other fixings. I must build the stable as fast as I can, so Pet and Patty can be inside walls too. Last night I could hear wolves howling from every direction. Seemed like, and they are close too. Well, you have your gun, so I'll not worry, said Ma. Yes, and there's Jack, but I'll feel easier in my mind when you and the girls have good solid walls around you. Why do you suppose we haven't seen any Indians? Ma asked. Here's a picture of some Indians and their teepees on the prairie. Oh, I don't know, Pa replied carelessly. I've seen their camping places along the bluffs. They're away on a hunting trip now, I guess. Then Ma called, Girls, the sun's up! And Laura and Mary scrambled out of bed and into their clothes. Eat your breakfast quickly, Ma said, putting the last of the rabbit stew on their tin plates. We're moving into the house today, and all the chips must be out. Remember, the chips are the wood chips that were made when Pa was using his axe to make the notches in the wood. So they ate quickly and hurried to carry all the wood chips out of the house. They ran back and forth as fast as they could, gathering their skirts full of chips and dumping them in a pile near the fire. But there were still chips on the ground inside the house when Ma began to sweep it with her willow bough broom. Ma limped, though her sprained ankle was beginning to get well, but she soon swept the earthen floor, and then Mary and Laura began to help her carry things into the house. So the floor in their house, boys and girls, is not a floor like we have in our houses. Their floor is made of earth. There is no actual floor except the earth. Pa was on top of the walls, stretching the canvas wagon top over the skeleton roof of saplings. The saplings are small trees. The canvas billowed in the wind. Pa's beard blew wildly, and his hair stood up from his head as if he were trying to pull itself out. He held on to the canvas and fought it. Once it jerked so hard that Laura thought he must let go or sail into the air like a bird. But he held on tight to the wall with his legs and tight to the canvas with his hands, and he tied it down. So here's Pa putting the wagon cover on their house to act as a roof now. Very different than the roof in our houses, isn't it, boys and girls? They've got a cloth roof. There, he said to it, stay where you are and be... Charles, Ma said. She stood with her arms full of quilts and looked up at him reprovingly, which means she was a little upset with him. And be good, Pa said to the canvas. Why, Caroline, what did you think I was going to say? Oh, Charles, Ma said, you scalawag. Ma thought Pa was going to say something a little inappropriate in front of the girls. Pa came right down the corner of the house. The ends of the logs stuck out, and he used them for a ladder. He ran his hands through his hair so that it stood up even more wildly, and Ma burst out laughing. Then he hugged her, quilt and all. Then they looked at the house, and Pa said, "How's that for a snug house?" "I'll be thankful to get into it," said Ma. There was no door, and there were no windows. There was no floor except the ground, and no roof except the canvas. But that house had good stout walls, that means strong, and it would stay where it was. It was not like the wagon, that every morning went on to some other place. "We're going to do well here, Caroline," Pa said. "This is a great country. This is a country I'll be contented to stay in the rest of my life." "Even when it's settled up?" Ma asked. "Even when it's settled up. No matter how thick and close the neighbors get, this country will never feel crowded. Look at that sky." Laura knew what he meant. She liked this place too. She liked the enormous sky, and the winds, and the land that you couldn't see to the end of. Everything was so fresh and clean and big and splendid. By dinner the house was in order. The beds were neatly made on the floor. The wagon seat and two ends of logs were brought in for chairs. Pa's gun lay on its pegs above the doorway. Boxes and bundles were neat against the walls. It was a pleasant house. A soft light came through the canvas roof. Wind and sunshine came through the window holes, and every crack in the four walls glowed a little, because the sun was overhead. Only the campfire stayed where it had been. Pa said he would build a fireplace in the house as soon as he could. He would hew out slabs to make a solid roof, too, before winter came. He would lay a puncheon floor and make beds and tables and chairs. But all that work must wait until he had helped Mr. Edwards and had built a stable for Pet and Patty. "When that's all done, said Ma, "I want a clothesline." Pa laughed. "Yes, and I want a well." After dinner he hitched Pet and Patty to the wagon, and he hauled a tub full of water from the creek so that Ma could do the washing. "You could wash clothes in the creek," he told her. "Indian women do." "If we wanted to live like Indians, you could make a hole in the roof to let the smoke out, and we'd have the fire on the floor inside the house," said Ma. "Indians do." That afternoon she washed the clothes in the tub and spread them on the grass to dry. After supper they sat for a while by the campfire. That night they would sleep in the house. They would never sleep beside a campfire again. Pa and Ma talked about the folks in Wisconsin, and Ma wished she could send them a letter. But Independence, that's the nearest town, was 40 miles away, and no letter could go until Ma made the trip to the post office there. Back in the big woods, so far away, Grandpa and Grandma and the aunts and uncles and cousins did not know where Pa and Ma and Laura and Mary and baby Carrie were. And sitting there by the campfire, no one knew what might have happened in the big woods. There was no way to find out. Nowadays we can just send a text or an email or a phone call or even a letter. But back in these days there were no phones, no cell phones, no computers. The only way to get information or communicate with people far away was through a letter, and the nearest post office is 40 miles away. So they don't know what's going on in Wisconsin, and the people in their family in Wisconsin doesn't know what's going on where they are. "Well, it's bedtime," Ma said. Baby Carrie was already asleep. Ma carried her into the house and undressed her, while Mary buttoned Laura's dress and petticoat waist down the back. And Pa hung a quilt over the door hole. The quilt would be better than no door. Then Pa went out to bring Pet and Patty close to the house. He called back softly, "Come out here, Caroline, and look at the moon." Mary and Laura lay in their little bed on the ground inside the house and watched the sky through the window hole to the east. The edge of the big bright moon glittered at the bottom of the window space, and Laura sat up. She looked at the great moon, sailing silently higher into the sky. Now here's a picture of Ma tucking in Mary and Laura and baby Carrie into their bed on the floor. And here's the gun, here's Pa's gun over the door. And here is the quilt that Pa hung over the door. Its light made silvery lines in all the cracks on that side of the house. The light poured through the window hole and made a square of soft radiance on the floor. It was so bright that Laura saw Ma plainly when she lifted the quilt at the door and came in. Then Laura very quickly lay down, before Ma saw her being naughty, sitting up in bed. She heard Pet and Patty whinnying softly to Pa. Then the faint thuds of their feet came into her ear from the floor. Pet and Patty and Pa were coming toward the house, and Laura heard Pa singing, "Sail on, silver moon, shed your radiance over the sky." His voice was like a part of the night and the moonlight and the stillness of the prairie. He came to the doorway singing, "By the pale silver light of the moon." Softly, Ma said, "Hush, Charles, you'll wake the children." So Pa came in without a sound. Jack followed at his heels and lay down across the doorway. Now they were all inside the stout walls of their new home, and they were snug and safe. Drowsily, Laura heard a long wolf howl rising from far away on the prairie, but only a little shiver went up her backbone, and she fell asleep. Now, boys and girls, the reason Laura only had a little shiver go up her backbone is, what do you suppose? You're right. She felt safe inside the strong walls of the house that Pa and Mr. Edwards had built. And again, just like she had mentioned, they'll never have to sleep by a campfire again. They'll be able to stay in their house now. Now, boys and girls, remember Ma said that if we wanted to live like Indians, we would, and we'd put a fire inside our house and have the smoke go up through the hole in the ceiling. And you can see in this picture here, these Native Americans or Indians are living in these teepees, and they have a fire inside the teepee, and there's a hole in the top so the smoke can go out. So that kind of shows you what Ma was talking about. That's the end of chapter 6, moving in. We will read chapter 7 on next week, because we don't have school tomorrow, Friday, or on Monday, because it's our spring break. So I'll read chapter 7, The Wolf Pack, next Tuesday. I hope you all have a good weekend and a good Easter, boys and girls. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.